Welcome to Midnight Asia, where the night deepens and shadows speak. Here, we journey into the unseen. Ghost stories, unsolved mysteries, strange phenomena, witchcraft, black magic, and cryptic legends rooted deep in Asian cultures, both ancient and modern. We uncover hidden truths, real-life accounts, and dark folklore passed down through whispers and shadows. Stories most have never heard, and some wish they hadn't. Subscribe if you dare to listen past midnight.
Tonight, prepare to hear a chilling tale of two friends who dared to defy ancient warnings on a treacherous mountain road in northern Thailand. What began as a simple reunion with an old college friend spiraled into a nightmare of inexplicable encounters and lost time. Brace yourself, for this is a journey into the heart of a darkness that will forever change how they see the world.
The relentless, humid embrace of Bangkok clung to Mark and Ben like a second skin, a constant reminder of the city's vibrant, chaotic energy. But today, that energy felt less like a pulse and more like a suffocating weight. Their spirits, however, were surprisingly high, buoyed by the promise of escape. A long, glorious weekend stretched before them, an invitation to shed the urban clamor and breathe the cleaner, cooler air of the mountains. Their destination? A remote, almost mythical village nestled deep in the mist-shrouded peaks of northern Thailand. A good 6-hour drive, or so their GPS optimistically claimed. Their old college friend Somchai had vanished into this wilderness years ago, a quiet soul who had always preferred the whispers of nature to the roar of traffic. He'd resurfaced recently with an invitation, albeit a hesitant one. When Mark had first suggested a visit, Somchai's usual warm, welcoming tone had been replaced by a strange, almost strained politeness. "It's quite far, you know," he'd demurred, "and the roads, they can be tricky." Mark, ever the optimist, had brushed it off. "Nonsense. It'll be great, just like old times. A proper reunion." Ben, always ready for an adventure, had chimed in. "Yes, Somchai, we're due for some wild stories and cheap beer." Despite their insistence, Somchai hadn't fully committed, his reasons for reluctance remaining frustratingly vague. He simply hadn't been clear why he didn't want them to visit. A week before their departure, Somchai had finally agreed, but his voice on the phone had taken on an unusual, almost chilling urgency. "All right," he'd conceded, "but if you come, there are rules. Very important rules." He paused, and the silence on the line had stretched, heavy and foreboding. "Under no circumstances," he'd continued, his voice dropping to a low, gravelly tone, "do you travel up the mountain after dark. If you reach the town at the bottom, Mae Rim, at dusk, you wait. You find a guest house. You wait until morning. Please, this is not a suggestion." Mark and Ben, comfortably ensconced in their air-conditioned apartment, had exchanged amused glances. "What's he so worried about? Ghosts?" Ben had quipped, a smirk on his lips. "Maybe he's got a secret moonshine operation up there he doesn't want us seeing," Mark had joked back. They'd agreed readily, their promises light and easily made, already envisioning themselves defying the warning, a thrilling little rebellion against their overly cautious friend. The drive itself was a slow, winding descent from the familiar into the increasingly remote. The bustling highways gradually thinned into 2-lane roads, then narrower, pothole-riddled paths. The modern concrete structures of the city gave way to traditional wooden houses on stilts, then to scattered shacks and vast emerald rice paddies. The air grew thicker, heavier, with the scent of damp earth and exotic blossoms. As the sun began its slow, fiery descent, painting the sky in bruised purples, oranges, and fiery reds, they finally reached Mae Rim, the last town before the ascent. "Well, look at that," Ben said, checking his watch. "Just past 6. Dusk, all right." Mark squinted at the darkening sky. Somchai said to wait. A flicker of genuine unease, the first real crack in their bravado, touched him. The town, though small, felt strangely quiet, the usual evening chatter muted. Nonsense, Ben scoffed, though his voice lacked its earlier conviction. We're practically there. Maybe an hour, tops. We're tired, man. I just want to crash at Somchai's, not hunt for some dodgy guest house. The argument was brief but surprisingly intense, a clash between lingering urban rationality and the creeping allure of the unknown. Exhaustion won. Fine, Mark sighed, but if we get eaten by a mythical beast, it's on you. They called Somchai, the signal patchy and unreliable. His voice, when it finally broke through the static, was laced with desperation. You're not coming up now, are you? Please, don't come up now. Find a hotel. I beg you. But his pleas were drowned out by their combined excitement and the sheer fatigue of the long journey. No way, man. We're already here. Practically at your doorstep. We're more than halfway there. Mark shouted into the phone, trying to sound cheerful despite the growing chill in the air. A long, agonizing silence followed. Then, Somchai's voice, grim and resigned, returned, rattling off a series of precise instructions. Each word was delivered with chilling gravity, as if he were reciting an ancient, sacred ritual. All right, he'd conceded, the defeat heavy in his tone. Listen carefully. Every step. Do not deviate. This is important, more important than you know. 1. The fork in the road. When you come up the mountain, there will be a fork. To the left is a clear, wide, well-lit road. To the right is a small, rugged, unpaved path. You must take the right route. Do not take the left, no matter how inviting it looks. 2. The village. As you continue, you will pass a small village. Whatever you do, do not stop for anyone or talk to anyone. Do not even slow down. Just drive straight through. 3. The spirit shrine. You will pass a small spirit shrine on the left. You must stop and bring offerings of food and water. Light 1 incense stick and 1 candle. Do not forget this. It is for the mountain spirits. 4. The trinket shack. You will pass a small shack with an old lady selling trinkets. If she is there, you must buy something from her. Anything. If she is not there, keep driving and do not stop. Do not even look back. 5. The guard shack. Finally, you will pass a guard shack. Tell him where you are going. If he gives you permission to proceed, go. If he says no, ask him again and again, until he says yes. Be polite, but be firm. Then proceed, but whatever you do, do not look back, not for a second. Mark and Ben, now thoroughly sobered by the raw intensity of Somchai's tone, agreed to follow every instruction carefully. The joking had stopped. The mountain, now a looming silhouette against the last vestiges of twilight, seemed to watch them. The journey began. The rental car, a sleek, modern SUV that felt increasingly out of place, began its slow, grinding ascent. They found the fork, just as Somchai had described. To the left, a clear, wide, well-lit road stretched invitingly, bathed in the soft glow of unseen streetlights, like a welcoming artery into the heart of the mountain. It looked new, safe, almost luxurious. Why couldn't we just take that one? Ben grumbled, his voice a low complaint. It looks like a proper highway. Mark, however, felt a strange, almost magnetic pull towards the right. Despite the logic screaming at him to take the well-lit path, Somchai's desperate tone echoed in his mind. He reluctantly steered their car onto the right, rugged path. The moment the tires crunched onto the unpaved surface, the air seemed to thicken. The road immediately narrowed, becoming little more than a dirt track. The trees on either side, ancient and gnarled, grew denser, their branches, heavy with unseen leaves, scraping against the car's paint with a sound like skeletal fingers dragging across a blackboard. The air grew cooler, carrying the scent of damp earth, and something else, something ancient and wild. Just as claustrophobia began to set in, a suffocating feeling of being swallowed whole by the forest, the road inexplicably widened, and then, as if by magic, bright streetlights suddenly appeared, leading the way. A collective sigh of relief, ragged and desperate, escaped them both. "See," Ben choked out, "I told you would be fine." Their relief, however, was short-lived.
The streetlights abruptly ended, as if someone had simply flipped a switch, plunging them back into profound, inky blackness. The sudden transition was jarring, disorienting. Soon, through the gloom, they discerned the outlines of structures. They had come upon a small village. All the houses were dark, windows like vacant, unseeing eyes. It looked utterly abandoned, frozen in time. The houses, made of old, rustic wood, some with leaves for roofing, stood silent, decaying. There was no sounds, no dogs barking, no crickets chirping, no distant music. Just an oppressive, absolute quiet that pressed in on their ears, making the thrum of their own blood feel deafening. "Strange place," Mark whispered, his voice barely audible. "Not even a streetlight. Who lives like this?" As they drove slowly through the silent, spectral village, their headlights cut through the gloom. Ahead, they saw a figure, an old woman walking with her bike in the same direction, her back to them. Mark instinctively reached for the brake, a natural impulse to offer help, to ask for directions, to break the unsettling silence. But Somchai's warning, sharp and clear, echoed in his mind. Do not stop or talk to anyone in the village. He kept driving, his foot hovering over the pedal. The headlights briefly illuminated her. She seemed utterly oblivious to their presence, her back rod-rom straight, her pace slow and steady. "Weird," Men muttered, his voice hushed. An old woman out riding a bike in the middle of the night, in the middle of nowhere? As they passed her, Mark, driven by an insatiable, morbid curiosity, glanced in the rearview mirror. The old woman, as if sensing his gaze, turned her head slightly. Where her eyes should have been, there were only two voids of absolute lightless blackness. Not shadows, not closed eyelids, but perfect, terrifying absence. Mark gasped, a choked sound caught in his throat.
Ben, who had also looked, let out a small, involuntary whimper. They exchanged a terrified glance, their faces pale in the dim glow of the dashboard. The silence in the car became a palpable entity, pressing down on them, thick with unspeakable dread. Neither of them said a word for a long, long time. The forest grew denser, the air heavy and humid, almost suffocating. The road had more twists and turns, each one feeling like a deliberate attempt to disorient them as they ascended further into the mountains in grace. Around a sharp right bend, there it was, bathed in their headlights, the small shrine. They stopped, the engine idling, its hum the only sound in the vast, silent wilderness. Neither Mark nor Ben were superstitious men. They were city dwellers, products of logic and reason. They did not believe in spirits or ghosts, but the encounter with the eyeless woman, the oppressive silence of the village, and Somchai's desperate warnings had chipped away at their skepticism. They decided to follow the instruction anyway, a desperate gamble against unseen forces. The shrine was tiny, no bigger than a dollhouse, sitting precariously on stilts by the side of the road. In the harsh glare of their headlights, they could make out old dripping wax, solidified in grotesque rivulets from countless candles lit by other travelers. Piles of old, dried and rotting food, crawling with maggots, lay scattered around its base, a testament to forgotten offerings. The air around it felt strangely cold, despite the humidity. With trembling hands, they fumbled with the offerings they'd brought, a small packet of instant noodles, a bottle of water. They lit one candle and one incense stick, the tiny flames flickering wildly in the unseen breeze, casting dancing shadows that seemed to writhe on the ancient trees. The sweet, cloying smell of the incense mingled with the stench of decay. They placed the offerings, muttered a quick, awkward prayer they didn't quite believe in, and scrambled back into the car, desperate to leave the unsettling place behind. The road then opened up into a wide clearing, and mercifully, the moon, a sliver of silver, finally broke through the clouds, casting a faint, ethereal glow over the landscape. They could see a dimly lit light post in the distance, a beacon of normalcy. They felt a surge of relief. Perhaps the worst was over. They soon came across a small shack by the side of the road. In it hung several trinkets, dried fruits and vegetables, illuminated only by a flickering oil lamp and the faint glow from the distant street lamp. No one was attending the stall. Mark and Ben felt a surge of relief. They could just keep driving, fulfilling the "if she is not there" part of Somchai's instruction. But then, from out of nowhere, from behind the shack, a young woman emerged. She was strikingly beautiful, with long, dark hair that cascaded down her back and eyes that seemed to sparkle even in the dim light. She looked to be in her early 20s, wearing a traditional blouse and a vibrant patung. Mark and Ben stopped, surprised, their car idling. "Are you not going to buy anything?" she asked, her voice melodious, almost hypnotic, a stark contrast to the oppressive silence of the night. Mark and Ben exchanged confused glances. "An old woman?" Somchai had said. "Only buy from an old woman." "There's supposed to be an old lady here," Ben whispered, a note of panic in his voice. Mark, trying to maintain a semblance of composure, stammered, We're in a bit of a hurry to get to our friend's house. We can't stop long." It was their polite Thai way of saying no. A shadow crossed her beautiful face. Her upbeat expression twisted into a deep, unsettling frown, and the oil lamp illuminating the stall flickered violently, then died, plunging her into a dark, motionless silhouette. Then a low, guttural, utterly unhuman voice, raspy and ancient, ripped through the silence. "Go, go now." The air around them grew cold, heavy with an unseen presence. Mark and Ben didn't need to be told twice. Their feet found the pedals, not fast enough, but they floored the accelerator, the tires spitting gravel as they sped away, as if the very air behind them had turned into a chasing phantom.
The uneasy silence in the car was now thick with palpable dread. They stayed quiet for most of the way. The only sound, the rushing wind against the open windows, a mournful sigh. The air was heavy and humid, clinging to their skin, and the forest became an impenetrable wall of darkness, pressing in from all sides. They drove for what felt like an eternity, their minds racing, replaying the terrifying encounters. Had they truly seen those things? Or was it exhaustion, fear playing tricks on them? They eventually drove into what appeared to be a rest stop, a small clearing with a viewpoint overlooking a vast, black jungle terrain below. The night was eerily quiet, an unnatural stillness. Not even the chirping of crickets, the usual symphony of the Thai night, could be heard. The silence was deafening, a vacuum that sucked away all comfort. As they continued their journey, the road, still narrow and winding, led them to a small guard shack in the middle of the road. It was the kind you might see when entering a national park, a simple wooden structure. They slowly approached, their headlights cutting through the gloom, illuminating the interior. Inside, a man dressed in a military uniform appeared to be sleeping, his head slumped forward. He was alone. The car's approach, however, startled him awake. He looked up, his eyes seeming to pierce through the windshield. "Where are you heading?" the guard asked, his voice flat, devoid of emotion. "To a town up the mountain, to see a friend," Mark replied, trying to sound calm, but his voice trembled slightly. The guard replied, his gaze unwavering. "The road up the mountain is too dangerous, too dark at the moment. You need to wait." Disappointment mixed with a growing cold dread washed over them. "But it's really important for us to be at our friend's place tonight," Ben insisted, remembering Somchai's instruction to ask again and again. "He's expecting us." The guard hesitated, his eyes fixed on them. The silence stretched, tense and suffocating. Then, with a slow, almost robotic gesture, he waved them off, a stiff, unnatural motion indicating they could proceed.
Mark and Ben, a wave of relief washing over them, quickly drove off. As they left, Ben, unable to resist the pull of morbid curiosity, turned around and looked back at the guard. The guard shack was now completely dark, as if the single bulb inside had suddenly blown. But silhouetted against the faint moonlight, where the guard had been, stood an extremely tall, impossibly slender humanoid figure. It was easily 15 feet tall. Its form was a mere shadow, but its presence was immense, terrifying. It seemed to stretch, to loom over the tiny shack. "Go! Go quickly! Go!" Ben shrieked, his voice raw with pure, unadulterated terror. Mark, not needing to see what Ben had seen, slammed the pedal to the floor, the car lurching forward. Both of them were panicking now, scared out of their minds, the last vestiges of their urban skepticism shattered. They drove in a blur of speed and terror, the car rattling over the uneven road. Finally, miraculously, they saw lights. Not the eerie lights, isolated lights they'd seen before, but a proper neighborhood, well lit with street lamps on both sides of the street. They had made it. They pulled up to Somchai's house, a small, traditional wooden home, its windows glowing warmly. Somchai came down to greet them, but his face, usually so open and friendly, was etched with an upsetting, worried expression. "Where have you guys been?" he exclaimed, his voice strained. "I've tried to call you for hours. No answer." Mark and Ben, still reeling from their ordeal, tried to explain. "Bad cell signal, I guess, due to being in the middle of the jungle heading up the mountain." Somchai stared at them, his eyes wide with disbelief. "You guys have been gone for 2 days?" In utter surprise, Mark and Ben burst out laughing, a nervous, disbelieving sound. 2 days? No way! We were just at the foothills about 3 hours ago. Stop playing around, Somchai! Somchai was not amused. His expression remained grim. "I'm not playing around. It's Tuesday morning. You left Bangkok on Sunday afternoon." He led them inside, his eyes searching their faces. "Did you follow every single direction I gave you?" They both nodded, then hesitated. Mark glanced at Ben. Ben sighed. "Well," Mark admitted, "when we got to the trinket stall, the old lady wasn't there. It was a young woman, and we talked to her. We didn't buy anything." Somchai's face fell, a look of profound disappointment and anger replacing his worry. "I told you not to stop for any reason if an old woman wasn't there. That was very important. It was crucial that you follow my instructions carefully. Because you talked to the young woman, you have messed something up. That was probably the reason why you lost time." He shook his head, a deep sigh escaping him. "This mountain, it plays tricks. It takes what it wants." The three friends hung out for the rest of the extended weekend, up in the mountains. They tried to put the terrifying journey behind them, sharing memories, eating delicious food, and laughing, though a lingering unease permeated their reunion. Somchai, however, remained unusually quiet, often staring out into the dense forest with a distant, troubled look in his eyes. Finally, it was time to return. Mark and Ben felt a profound sense of relief as they began their descent, now with daylight illuminating their path. The forest was not so scary now. The sun dappled through the leaves, birds chirped, and butterflies filled the air, a stark contrast to the oppressive darkness of 2 nights ago. They came across the guard shack again, what they remembered to be a well-built structure manned by a military figure was nothing more than an old, ruined, abandoned shack, crumbling and overgrown with weeds and moss. It looked like it had been abandoned for decades. The hair on the back of their necks rose, a cold shiver running down their spines. Further down, they passed the little village which had looked so completely abandoned and silent in the night. In the harsh light of day, it was revealed for what it truly was, an open cemetery. The homes they thought they had seen were actually ancient tombs
overgrown with weeds and tree vines, some crumbling, others adorned with faded, forgotten offerings. It was a land area officially designated for a burial ground, a place of the dead. The realization hit them with the force of a physical blow. They had driven through a graveyard, a silent city of the deceased, and been watched by an eyeless phantom. They were frightened like they had never been before. Upon reaching the fork in the road, the one they had taken 2 nights ago, a morbid curiosity compelled them. Since it was daylight and they could clearly see, they decided to take the left route, the one they were not supposed to take. The road was wide open and looked very new, like it had been recently paved. They drove for about 50 feet, the car gliding smoothly. Then abruptly, the road ended. It simply stopped. In front of them, the paved surface collapsed into a sheer cliff face hundreds of feet down into a rocky ravine. It had probably sunk after a heavy rain, a massive landslide taking away the mountain's edge. Had they taken that left turn that night, in the profound darkness, they would have plunged to their deaths, their car a twisted wreck at the bottom of the abyss. Mark and Ben turned their car around, their hearts pounding in their chests, a new kind of terror settling in. They drove in stunned silence back toward civilization, leaving the mountain and its secrets behind. They were very happy to be back home, the familiar sounds and sights of Bangkok a comforting balm. It had been a memorable experience, one that would forever be etched into their minds. They had seen things that could not be explained, things that defied logic and reason. If they had not been believers in ghosts or the mysterious before, they certainly were now. This was a journey they would remember for the rest of their lives. And they knew, with a chilling certainty, they would never look at a dark, winding mountain road the same way again.
Thank you for joining us in the dark tonight. If our tale sent chills down your spine, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to help keep the shadows alive. We'll see you in the next episode of Midnight Asia, where more secrets wait to be unearthed and more whispers beg to be heard. Until then, keep your lights low and your mind open, because the night never forgets.